On today's Locked On Thunder podcast, the Oklahoma City Thunder officially have their big three locked up long term. Can this be the start of a dynasty? Can the Thunder repeat next season? And should you be petrified of the second apron? All coming up.
You are Locked On Thunder, your daily Oklahoma City Thunder podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Let's get it going on the Locked On Thunder podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your host, media member, and beat writer for Thunder on SI, Rylan Stiles. Follow me on Twitter at Rylan_Stiles. Follow the show on Twitter at LOThunderPod. Email the show, LOThunderPod@gmail.com. On today's show, brought to you by Game Time, we're diving into OKC signing J-Dub to a contract extension. It officially locks in the top three for OKC, plus your mailbag questions. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Go download the Game Time app, create your account, use code LOCKEDONNBA, and you get $20 off your first purchase. Well, the offseason for OKC is, for all intensive purposes, over. I mean, that they have their standard contracts in place with their 15-man roster. They just signed J-Dub to a contract extension, the last of the big three to get his deal, as Shai's on a supermax, Chet's on a rookie scale max, and now J-Dub joins him on one. And now they just have one open roster spot, and it's in the two-way capacity. So that's something I find interesting, not so much, globally interesting as it is the Thunder's top three. So this deal for Jalen Williams is a 5-year contract worth up to $287 million, a max contract extension. As Shams reports, the Thunder view this trio as their cornerstone for the rest of the decade. And the Thunder officially now will not have to relive the drama, the heartbreak, and the narrative surrounding that James Harden trade. There's no player option, no team option in this contract. And just like Chet Holmgren's, this kicks in during the 26-27 NBA season. I think with J-Dub, when you're looking at the investment into him as a player, you have to talk about the future for him, not just the present. The present is still good. Like what J-Dub is presently is an all-NBA player, an all-defensive player, an all-star, and a number 2 option on a title team who scored 40 points in the finals. That's what he is current day. And the beauty of this contract for the Thunder and for J-Dub himself is that current day perhaps will be the worst version of himself through the life of this contract, because he can get better. And you look at what he did in the playoffs and the way that he performed after Game 6 against Denver. And the whole first round, he struggled in that Denver series until Game 6. And then in Game 7 onward, he was an electrifying player. He was a bona fide number 2 option who also filled in as a number 1 option in some games to keep the Thunder afloat, like whenever the Thunder were taking on the Pacers in the finals in Game 4, whenever he kind of kept them within striking distance. And while Shai had the electrifying fourth quarter and he gets all the stats for it, and he put up 15 points in the frame, and it was just a jaw-dropping performance in those 12 minutes, you don't get to that point without J-Dub's production in the first 3 quarters. And largely, Shai's production was built on the 2-man game between him and J-Dub, an element that we had seen sparingly in OKC, but they went to very heavily in that Game 4. Another avenue for them to explore that 2-man game of them playing off of one another, with J-Dub bringing the ball up and then getting Shai into a switch that is just beneficial to him. The Thunder can do that a lot more. But when you look at J-Dub as an individual, he made those strides in the playoffs where his mindset was entirely different. His force around the rim was entirely different. And his ability to dictate how the game flowed, the control he had with the ball in his hands whenever he had that opportunity in a secondary unit. And as we talked about in Game 4, the fourth quarter, like it was just a 180 from the stuff that we saw from J-Dub previously. He answered a lot of questions in that playoff run, one that he was battling through a torn ligament in his wrist. A torn ligament that, if you go watch Jalen Williams' personal YouTube channel, I'd recommend all of you doing it for this video. He put out a video on his personal YouTube channel, and he talked about what all he went through in the playoffs. And here's some of the highlights, but I want you to go watch the entire video. He had nearly 30 injections into his wrists to be able to play. Just to be able to play. 30 injections, and this is how he performed in the playoffs. All the great things we just talked about. He had to change his jump shot during the playoffs because the wrist was ailing him so much he could not shoot to the way he normally does in terms of just form. He re-aggravated the injury against Denver in that series. I believe he said twice he re-aggravated it. Once bracing a fall, once on a defensive play with Gordon. So you look at the adversity that he battled through in the playoffs and how he overcame that, and you already see the trajectory that he's on. And this is a great investment for OKC. And I think that J-Dub can continue to grow into a player that right now is at an all-star level. Maybe you can just call him a star, but he has superstar potential. Now, who knows if he reaches that superstar height, but he's for sure an all-star level player, if nothing else. Like, his floor is a consistent all-star. And I believe he can at least hit the, truth being in the middle of the star label if he's not there already. Of course, I don't think he's there already because he has to do it over a sustained period versus just, this season. But I think he's going to do that at the very least. And then we pose the same question that we posed yesterday about Chet Holmgren. What's the other option? If you're so scared about what the finances look like for OKC, which we're going to break down entirely on today's show now that we have everything in hand with what the future looks like. If that scares you so much, what's the other option? Because the dirty little secret about the same people who are fear-mongering you right now about the Thunder's future is that they just don't like Oklahoma City. And I don't like to partake in the us against the world mentality of this state, but it is true that the national media just simply does not like the Thunder. They don't like going to a flyover state. They don't want to come here. And OKC, being the best team in basketball, forces the national media to be here for the finals. It forces the national media to fly in for big games throughout the regular season. It forces them to be the topic of conversation when it's the last thing that they want to have happen. So they're going to pick whatever side benefits them. And I'll tell you why, because if the Thunder didn't pay one of these big three guys and they didn't keep this top three together, then the Thunder would spend the summer being a laughing stock of like, oh, it's happening again. You didn't learn your lessons from the James Harden stuff. Now that the Thunder have signed up the top three guys, now it's, well, you've just ruined your trajectory. You've ruined your future. You're going to be so hamstrung under this new CBA. It's impossible to have sustained success. When the Thunder's future is anything but scary, it's anything but hamstrung. Is there hard work to do for them in the future, like we talked about yesterday, and we'll do it again today? Absolutely. But you look at how this is discussed, and it's discussed in the entirely wrong way. Memphis decided to punt on its core because it was not good enough instead of paying Desmond Bane. Are they in a better position because they avoided the precious second apron? They avoided the lofty tax bill. They avoided the big salary sheet. Are they in a better position than OKC? I just want to know what team is in a better position than the Thunder. Because if you don't like the Thunder's outlook, well, then whose outlook are you going to like? Because every other team either has an older core that's not good enough to compete with the Thunder's core, or a worse young core that either they're going to have to go the Memphis route or go the Thunder route and dish out massive extensions to guys who have not accomplished what this core has accomplished. So then who do you want to model yourself after if the Thunder aren't doing it right? Then who's doing it right? The thing is, like we said all season long when people continued to doubt this team, if you just take the negative stance and you never put a take out there, you never have a bold opinion, you never want to crown anybody, you never want to act like anyone's good until they've actually done it, then you're going to be right more often than not. Because right now, the take that's easy to make is that the Thunder are never going to win again. They're just never going to do it. Because winning a championship is hard. You need luck. You need skill. You need a combination of all of it. And the best team doesn't always win. It's the breaks. It's life. And so the ability to bank on the fact that only one team out of 30 can win a title, if you just bet against whatever team that you're talking about, you're often going to be right. And so, yeah, the Thunder may never win it again, but that doesn't mean that they're not going to have sustained success and have the opportunity to have the ability to compete and be a contender, they will be a contender for the rest of the decade. No matter the contracts issued to now that we know it's max contracts to J-Dub, Chet, and Shea. They're going to be a contender for the rest of the decade, and it's going to be very hard to capture more and more titles. But again, I ask you, who has a better chance to do it? Who has a better position? Whose kind of identity and future and roster would you swap with if you're Oklahoma City? Nobody. Nobody. And it's easier for the Thunder to build around J-Dub, Chet, and Shea because they all can fit multiple roles on the court, playing multiple positions, particularly J-Dub and Chet, because Shea's role is kind of defined in the sense of he's going to obviously be your best player for the rest of the decade. He's going to obviously be a kind of a guy that can lead the league in scoring as he did this season, an MVP caliber guy as he has been the last 3 seasons and won it this year. So like his role is more set in stone, but J-Dub and Chet, we've already seen them play multiple different facets and archetypes of the game. They're also 27, 23, and 24. They're already good enough to win a title. Who would you rather be if not OKC? And it's going to be difficult to sustain this in the sense of championship level, but to sustain this in the sense of the ability to win will not be too difficult for OKC to overcome. And they might repeat. They might do it again next season. The trick is they've already done it right now to where even if you look at Boston, it's like, well, look, Boston couldn't keep it together. I don't know that they'd be selling off all these guys had Tatum not gotten hurt, first of all. But imagine had Boston won the title in 2022. Now, we know how Boston's path unfolded. Had they won it in 2022 and then had the exact same trajectory, where maybe they get upset in the playoffs a couple times, then they win it last year, that's a heck of a run. And the Thunder already have one in hand, and they have a great chance to get another one for the coming decade. You know, the rest of this decade, that is, next 5 years. Coming up, though, how can the Thunder sustain this with this massive, massive top 3 in terms of payload, in terms of their future assets and the salary sheet and the second apron? We'll dive into all that and your mailbag questions, including, can the Thunder repeat, coming up. But first, I want to say right now, my good friends over at Game Time, go check out Game Time today, because if you've ever decided to get on a last-minute ticket whenever you head to the ball game, because look, baseball is an everyday sport, and maybe your friends and family are hanging around today in downtown OKC, don't really know what to do tonight, looking for an activity, and you just decide, you know what? Let's head up to the OKC Comets game. Suddenly you realize that you want to be in that stands. Well, that's exactly where Game Time comes in. It's an easy way to grab last-minute tickets without the stress, without the planning, without having to look distant into the future. You can get tickets right up to first pitch and even later if you want to with Game Time. That way, with the money that you save on tickets, you can splurge in the concession stands, you can go to the merch store, and you can even just invite a bigger group with you because you're saving so much money at Game Time. They make that possible for you. Game Time makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app actually drop closer to first pitch, and they get you incredible last-minute deals, clear seat views. That way you know exactly what you're getting into before you buy. Lowest prices guaranteed. It takes the worry out of buying tickets. Game Time is the official ticketing partner of Locked On MLB, and make sure you go check them out today because it can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with you at Game Time. Go download the Game Time app today, create your account, use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms and conditions apply. Again, create your account, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Go download the Game Time app today. What time is it? Game time. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. So how's it all going to work? How are the Thunder going to put this together whenever they just re-signed J-Dub and Chet and Shea to max contracts? Well, the Thunder have 14 future first-round picks over the next 7 years. That includes the possibility of 4 picks in the 2026 NBA draft. They have a new arena opening up in 2028. The national TV contracts are kicking in, which you would imagine would mean that the cap is rising, but obviously we'll see on the cap situation how much it rises. But the national TV contracts kicking in is a big revenue stream for OKC. The possibility of expansion, which seems like, you know, a loud secret around the league that it's going to happen, that's another revenue stream for OKC. The kick-ins of these deals don't all hit at one time, because Shea is going to be kicked out, going to start to kick in 2 years down the road. Jada and Chet a season down the road. So that's the staggeration of the extensions actually coming into play, help OKC as well. And then here's the big one. It's all a part of the plan. The Thunder have had the 5th lowest payroll since 2020-2021 season. They've been planning and kind of, they've been planning to have this expensive bill come due. They've been planning to have all this work out for them. When they made those draft picks, whenever they got this core together, they knew that eventually they'd have to pay the piper. And they've been able to kind of save some money because these guys were on cost control deals, because they were so young throughout this entire run so far. I mean, they're the second youngest team to be the 1 seed and win a playoff series, etc. This season, only behind last year's team who did all of that. It's like they're still young. And the reason that they've been young in part is because they've been able to save money, and now they're going to have to pay it forward. And the new arena is almost like free money because of what the taxpayers have done for them in Oklahoma City to fund that arena. Now, the difficult part is going to be for the Thunder is that they have to hit on those picks. They have to replace their rotational pieces well and do it effectively and efficiently. But building around that top 3 should be easy, just like we described, because of all the different styles of play that they can play. All the different players you can put around them where you don't have to worry too much about, like, oh, can Jada, Chet, and Shea maximize this guy even though he's a really good on-ball player? Well, yes, they can. Even though he can't be on the ball, can they maximize him? Yes, they can. Like they can fit around whomever you deem the best player for these picks. So the 14 future firsts, the 18 future second-round picks over the next 7+ years is very important, and that's going to be what decides things for OKC, honestly. Because they're going to have to make changes. Nobody is selling you that this 15-man roster, which is the same as last year's team, sans Dylan Jones and swap in Thomas Schwarber. Nobody's going to sell you that this roster won't change. It's going to have to. You're going to have to move on from Isaiah Hartenstein. You're going to have to move on from some beloved players like Alex Caruso or Lou Dort, or somebody, like shuffling someone else into the Wiggins and Joe spot, even though those guys are on very team-friendly deals. Like, you're going to have to make some changes in OKC, but it's not an insurmountable feat to put quality players around the best big 3 in the league. On top of the internal development of that big 3, this big 3 has not topped out yet. Like, this big 3 is the furthest thing from being tapped out of their developmental tree and their developmental track. So the combination of the two, of having the best drafting GM in the league with a historic amount of future draft assets, with a big 3 who you just paid but they are still going to get better, all comes into play here for how you're going to navigate this thing in the future. And again, I ask you, what was the alternative? Trade one of them for guys who you'd either have to pay and be in the same spot, or rentals and trying to patchwork something after you know that this top 3 works? Like, there is no other option here. The Thunder, if they keep this same roster that they have today, which they have the ability to next season with team options, etc., they'd have a tax bill over $180 million. But that's including everyone. That's not including, moving on from iHeart, declining his option and moving forward without him, and having that money fall off the books. That's not including any moves that you make next summer to continue to massage that tax bill. And next season, if they kept everyone and didn't make that tough decision on Isaiah Hartenstein that we all think is going to happen, the Thunder would still be just below the second apron with the roster just as is. And look at this graphic from Keith Smith. And I think that if you're interested in the CBA and you're interested in the second aprons and hard caps, etc., you should be watching Keith Smith's show with Trevor Lane called The Front Office Show. It's very insightful on how the mechanics of trades work and the mechanics of signing players work and all the different things you can do to kind of not bypass necessarily, but work around some of these restrictions. But under the cap, you can do whatever you want to under the cap. And that's just like the Thunder are not going to be under the cap again until they rebuild again. So like that's nothing to worry about. Even over the cap, I think it's nothing to worry about for the Thunder because they're clearly going to be in one of the aprons. Now, the first apron, if you're over the first apron, you still have access to your taxpayer MLE. And if you're hard capped at the first apron, you can't use more than the taxpayer mid-level exception. Using the biannual exception, acquire players via sign and trade, signing a buyout player, like that, those things all become a lot harder. Now, the second apron is what scares everybody because you have no signing exceptions like the MLE, etc. You just don't have any of them. And the trades become a little bit harder under the second apron because you can't like aggregate salaries as simply. You're actually not allowed to be sending out cash in a trade, for example. Aggregating 2 or more players in a salary in a trade, you cannot do. You can only re-sign your own free agents. You can only sign draft picks. You can only sign players to minimum contracts. And making trades with one player salary is sent out and equivalent or less salary comes back in. So you can do a 1-for-2 trade or more trades in that capacity. But again, the money that you sent out has to be equal or less to the money that comes back into you. So the second apron has more restrictions, but they're not to the point where you'd break up a core this good to avoid it, especially a core this good this young. And the Thunder won't be in that second apron until after next season, because even if next season they run it back with Hartenstein, which we don't think is going to happen, they still would be just underneath that second apron. And so the graphic that you see on the screen, if you're watching on YouTube, is a great graphic from Keith Smith. And you can also just go to Keith Smith's Twitter, and he tweets it out all the time. It's great. Just go to his Twitter account, and he's been on the show before, and look through his media tab, and you'll see all the pictures that he sends to people who are asking second apron questions. So you can get a layout of what all you can and cannot do at each different layer of under the cap, over the cap, first apron, second apron. But the thing is, the hardest part for OKC will be hitting on their draft picks. So long as they hit on their draft picks, they're going to be all right. And the draft picks aren't just about the actual player that they draft. It also can be used to sweeten a deal to move on from a contract of anyone that you wouldn't want to trade your top 3, but anyone else. You can try to sweeten the deal to move on from them. It can also be used to trade and get a veteran who's on maybe an expiring contract that's pretty cheap and team friendly, and you give up draft picks to kind of bring someone else in. Like you can use them in a lot of different ways to help you navigate this if you're OKC. And the biggest thing, and the biggest reason not to find a ton of concern over this right now is that Sam Presti put it so greatly in his exit interview. They won't be hit with any of the repeater penalties until after this CBA is already done. And then you have a whole new can of worms to worry about. What's the new CBA look like? What's the new kind of agreement going to look like between the players union and the NBA? And it could either change for the better or for the worse for OKC. We just don't know how it would unfold. You would imagine it probably change for the better for OKC if both sides opt out at the earliest opt-out date, because players won't want it to be as strenuous on teams to be able to sign them and give them money and pay them. But that's just the guess. That's a complete hypothetical. The facts of the matter are the Thunder are going to be fine. The Thunder are in the best position in basketball still after signing all their guys. And unless you're going to only try to win when you have rookie scale deals, and the second you no longer have rookie scale deals, trade them all away and restart, no team's going to be able to build a championship level roster that can sustain more than a year or two. And the Thunder are going to be able to do that. They're going to be able to sustain this over the next decade, the rest of this decade. And we'll see if they get the luck needed. If they have the talent to, but can they get the injury luck? They didn't last time. Like again, last time it wasn't even so much about trading James Harden that hindered them from winning a title. Every time that you looked up when they were in a great position, Russell Westbrook and the Pat Bev play Kevin Durant's injury, Serge Ibaka's injury. Like those things are largely out of your control. Blowing the 3-1 lead to Golden State, like that really hurt you in a quest for a championship, one of your best chances at one. And then, of course, you lost Kevin Durant to the Warriors because of the CBA changes that allowed him to go sign with the Warriors. So it's obviously a talking point. It's obviously something that people are wondering about, but I don't think it's anything to worry about. Wondering and worrying are two different things. You shouldn't worry about the second apron. You shouldn't worry about how the Thunder are going to navigate this thing. But again, in my opinion, the second apron won't be the demise of this team. What would be the demise of this team is if Thomas Schwarber can't play, and if he can't fill in for Isaiah Hartenstein. If Cason Wallace, for example, can't fill in for one of your top defenders who you might lose. If you miss on these draft picks and you just start missing on these draft picks. And if you can't find ways to get out of jail, right? Denver, for example, this offseason got out of jail. I mean, you look at Denver and you couldn't miss more on draft picks than what Denver has done since signing their top three guys of Porter Jr., Jokic, Murray. You can't miss more than Denver missed. And yet today they sit in a position where they're going to be a popular pick to win the championship for good reason. I mean, they have a great team in Denver now. Whenever they headed into the summer with things looking bleak, might be too strong, but at least looking through a lens of like, I don't know, a sketchy lens of if they can improve this roster. They make a great trade with the Cam Johnson deal, which we've talked about a lot over the last 2 weeks for Denver. They made a great trade with the Cam Johnson deal. It opened up avenues for them to go get Tim Hardaway Jr. It opened up avenues for them to bring back Bruce and all that he brings to that team. And now they feel good about themselves. But it took them a cycle, to make moves and improve their roster after, with all their flaws and all their missteps and all their miscalculations, Denver was a game away from beating the best team in basketball and having a path to another championship with the best player in the world. And that's what I think that people lose sight of, especially because it's happened so early for OKC to where like you don't allow yourself to view J-Dub as a top 15 player or to view Chet as a potential star. And with Shea, he's even so new at the superstar level. But like when you have players the caliber of Jokic and the caliber of Shea, and you have players the caliber of J-Dub and Chet flanking Shea, it largely doesn't matter the rest of it. Like you're going to be able to compete. You're going to be able to contend. You're going to be able to be in a spot where you could win one. And the Thunder, unlike Denver, have a bevy of assets to bail them out. To where if they miss on a pick or two, or if they've missed on some guys who are currently on their roster, they have the 18 future second-round picks, the 14 future first-round picks to help ease that burden. Whereas Denver was strapped of assets, and yet they still were able to climb out of a feeling of unease with their franchise and into a summer full of hope and a season full of hope. And being, I think, the second best team in the West. In the rough and tumble West, which we all know is the best conference in basketball and the hardest one to win, I think that Denver has the second best chance to win it. And the Thunder have more avenues to be in that same ilk here in a few years than Denver did. So a lot of the times we just overthink things. A lot of the times we just, worry too much, frankly. Every little thing's going to be all right, man. Coming up, let's answer your mailbag questions. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day, talking Thunder basketball. Let's start with annoyed. The Thunder's mentality, are they ready to repeat? It's hard a lot of the times for teams to maintain that mental sharpness, that sheer will to win. Once you've won it all, plus as champs, you'll get every other team's best shot. Annoyed starts off the mailbag with a great question. Look, repeating is exceptionally hard to do, especially with where the talent's at in the league right now. There's a reason why that since that Warriors run, no team's been able to repeat. As a matter of fact, no team's been able to escape the second round after winning a title. It's really, really hard, and I don't think that you can bet on it happening again. I don't think, as a matter of fact, I know, the way that the Thunder don't repeat next year, like if you tell me right now someone else won the title next year, something that will not be on my list of reasons why will be their mentality. Because these guys want more. These guys have an exceptional work ethic, an appetite to be great. Shea consistently talks about publicly wanting to be the best ever, wanting to be the best player in the league, wanting to be among the greats. And the reality is you don't do that with one ring. And he knows that. And he's talked about that. And Shea, if you want to buy into him being a great work ethic guy, look no further than his career trajectory of getting better every single year. Even after he already reached top 5 in MVP voting status, he got better. And he's in his prime. Chet, I mean, the stories that you hear about Chet, and I know I haven't been doing this a long time. I've been doing this at a real professional capacity since 2020. So I mean, take this with a grain of salt if you want to. I want to make sure that that's out there. I've never covered an athlete who has a better work ethic than Chet Holmgren. I mean, the stories that you hear about him and what he does behind the scenes to prepare, to improve, the way that he quite literally eats, sleeps, and breathes and drinks and everything basketball. It's all basketball all the time for him. You should bet on Chet. You should bet on Chet's development. And then J-Dub has a real chance to be in that superstar convo, and he knows that. And yes, all three guys got massive paydays. And they got paydays this summer that most of us will never even dream of getting. I would imagine 99.9% of the audience listening. I won't discount the fact that maybe there's some tycoon out there. Maybe Jeff Bezos is checking in. But largely, none of us will ever touch in our lives. And it's amazing for them. That's generational wealth for them. That's awesome. But there's always more out there. And it's like, if J-Dub becomes that superstar, then his next contract, just like Shea, will be even greater than this one. We'll make this one look like chump change with the cap rising and the 5 years from now if he's a superstar, etc. So I don't think anything about this team doing it or not doing it for a repeating standpoint will be about their mentality, will be about kind of their attention to detail or their want to, or their try hard, or their competitiveness. I think that all these guys are competitive. And the reason I point out those top three guys specifically is that everyone else on this roster, they haven't made it yet. I mean, in reality, they just haven't. Like Isaiah Joe, Aaron Wiggins, Cason Wallace. Those guys still need to stack together high-level seasons to get their next contract and get it to where they want it to be. And for Joe and Wiggins to carve out a future, a very long-term future in this league. Jay Will, AJ Mitchell, Topic is a rookie, Sorber's a rookie. Like those guys individually have to come to play and have to want to play at a high level. Now, as a team's identity standpoint, I think this is why it was so important to hire Mark and have his philosophies in the building, because they've treated every game the same. And again, since I've done this since 2020, I have been able to see Mark's entire career in the NBA. And I can promise you, sitting on those Zooms, camera off, getting to cover the team from Lawton, what a time that was. Barry Trammell had his camera on a lot of times. I love Barry Trammell, and I loved whenever we were on Zoom because Barry Trammell would have these incredible Zoom moments. I distinctly remember one Zoom where he was on his front porch swing and just having the time of his life. Another Zoom was a draft night Zoom, and those usually are around 2 a.m., 1 a.m. And he was quite literally, I can't make this up, folks. He was in striped pajamas and with an old-time nightcap. I had never seen anything like that before. It was a complete baller move by Barry Trammell. Anyway, the same things he's saying now about 0-0, about stacking days, etc., were the same things he was saying as a 21 team. The interesting part about that is, since he's remained so consistent, I think they've been able to handle change. And this is the change that they've had to go through. Whenever they were first together with this team, players openly admit that they just brushed it aside as, oh, we're playing the Thunder tonight. I can stay up later and play the video game on stream. I can go out later, do whatever. They didn't take it seriously. Jeff Teague is among those former players who talked about like what it was like playing the Thunder back then, and he just didn't care. You didn't get up for those games. Then they go into hunting top teams and them being the ones to want to measure themselves against the Bostons of the world, against top teams in the league, and being a spunky little team that, like, guys, for the last 2 years, guys, the NBA has not been sleeping on OKC. They've been competitive against the Thunder throughout the regular season. The Thunder have just been good enough to beat them. And now they head into another era, all in a boom, boom, boom succession. In a 3-year span, they go from a snooze fest of an opponent for other teams to a, hey, let's show these young pups, what it's really like to play competitive basketball. And now the Thunder are the measuring stick. The Thunder will get every team's best shot every night because it'll be a game that you circle up just to see how you can compete. And the Thunder aren't absolved from that. You look at how they handled the end of the season. Whenever they had everything locked up and they were a 60-win team, etc., you bet your bottom dollar that they circled that Denver matchup whenever they had Denver back-to-back, and that Lakers matchup when they had the Lakers back-to-back. They circled those matchups to see where they fit in, to see kind of how they stacked up. And now the Thunder will be the team that teams do that against and that teams do that for. So it'll be interesting to see how they handle that. And that's an element of the regular season that still makes it interesting. But I don't think that if they do or don't repeat, it'll have anything to do with their mentality. I just don't. Ben Glover asks, who do you believe in more, Wiggins or Mitchell long-term? Look, my love for Aaron Wiggins is well documented in the pre-draft process, and then he got drafted by OKC, and I've been pounding the drum for him to get more minutes and more consistent minutes. But long-term, I side with AJ Mitchell because the defense is already at a higher level than Wiggins. I think that Mitchell plays a valuable role offensively because he's a same baseline play finisher as Wiggins. And then offensively, AJ's better on the ball than Wiggins. And the area that Wiggins gets Mitchell and the area that Wiggins gets the best of AJ is that Wiggins is a better 3-level shot creator. I think Aaron Wiggins is still your best bench player who can create his own shot. And that's a big deal. And that's an area where Wiggins thrives in. But a lot of other areas, and especially other areas that matter more come playoff time, AJ Mitchell has the upper hand. So if we're just gambling on players and buying stock, which we'll have another stock watch coming up, I would buy AJ Mitchell stock very heavily. Another one from Big Change says top breakout candidates. I mean, the Thunder don't have a ton of breakout candidates because rookies can't break out. I mean, rookies are just going to have their baseline level of play to get them started. But I think that Sorber can be better and be ready to play faster than some people believe. But if I was talking Thunder breakouts, I'd talk AJ, Kaysen, and Isaiah Joe. AJ, we just talked about. Kaysen, I do believe that there's another level there for him to reach offensively. As a guy with the ball in his hands, tapping into his point guard background, and a guy who can really create for himself and others that he hasn't gotten to show a ton. And then for Isaiah Joe, maybe I'm crazy on this. And I'm going to fully admit that if of all the takes I've ever had, this is one where I could see myself being wrong on present day more so than other takes. Because whenever you give a take, you feel like it's going to be right. But with Joe, this one's I'm kind of iffy on. But I just believe there's something about Isaiah Joe where at some point he's going to have to and will take the next level as a shooter to where he goes from a really good but low volume shooter and a shooter who, like, teams know that Isaiah Joe's a good shooter, but they're not exactly desperate to close out to him. They're not exactly desperate to hinder him from getting shots off. And you look at the development that he made this season, and it was a very quiet one, but we tried to scream it from the mountaintops of the ways that the Thunder could put him in different actions this year compared to last year, where he's coming off of screens and getting handoffs from iHeart and being more of a movement shooter than a stationary shooter. If he continues that path and can now be a high volume, high efficiency shooter, then he would constitute as a breakout player to me, because that completely changes the value of an Isaiah Joe. Then he becomes an actualized sharpshooter. He becomes an actualized floor spacer and really helps this team. Because to me, the defense, I know that comparatively speaking, it's not good because the Thunder are so good defensively. But to me, the defense is at an above passable level because he competes really hard. He has great positioning and technique defensively, and he is physical on that end despite his frame, to where, like, yeah, he can't bully people, but he also can take a hit and take a shoulder bump and still be in a great position to contest a shot, to where his defense, when you're flanking him by 4 great defenders, will not drop your overall team defense one bit. And if he takes that next step as a shooter, I think it's only additive to the Thunder and makes them better. So I think that Joe is a player who could break out this year. I don't know that it'll happen, but I just have a random gut feeling that it will. And then around the NBA, I love Jalen Green. I predicted that he'd be a 2-time scoring champ. That prediction is looking way off right now. But getting him away from Şengün, getting him in a new change of scenery, I think can be good for him. I think that Jerice Walker is set to break out with the Pacers front court situation. I think that Josh Giddey is going to be an all-star in the East. I mean, there's just so many spots up for grabs. And if you tell me that he's going to average a near triple-double efficiently, as he did in the second half of this season, then he's going to have to be an all-star. So, like, then by nature of being an all-star, he has to be a breakout player. So that's kind of what I have there. Last two, and then we'll get to more of your questions throughout the week. Smokey Barra says, how does it feel going into the season after winning a championship? And Mr. Malone asks if people treat me differently after the Thunder won a championship. Guys, I did not win a title. I did not win a championship. The Thunder won a championship, and it's been great for me because of my industry. Like, because whenever you cover a winner, more teams are interested in a winner. More teams click on your show, read your articles, etc. So that's been great. But nothing for me has changed. I mean, in terms of like people treating you differently, I mean, I've gotten to network with a lot more people nationally because of the events that covering this team has taken me on, like Shea's first All-Star game, the Indiana All-Star weekend, going to every playoff game this year, going to the finals. Like, that's been cool and that's been a help. But ultimately, nothing changes from my standpoint of how you prepare for a season, how you cover the team, etc. You're only as good as your last show. And the part about this is, like, this is somebody's first show, and I appreciate you tapping in and listening. This is somebody's first show. And the caliber of the show will either make that person listen to a second one or not. So you're only as good as your first show, and every show is incredibly important, whether they're winning 20 games or not. But it has been good that Thunder won a championship for me personally, as just a guy who makes a living off of the attention and clicks that the show creates, and that it's been wonderful. The growth of this show has been unprecedented for what we're doing, and I really appreciate that. Julian also says, do you play basketball? And if OKC repeats, will you do an episode of Locked On Thunder dressed as Elvis? Yes, I'm not very good at basketball. I'm very fundamental in my game. I'm actually playing basketball today with Brandon and Michael, who've been on the show, and a few of their friends. So we try to get a run in a pickup game, very low stakes, very just fun, not like anything serious, but like every Friday we go out and play some in OKC. And then with God as my witness, yes, if the Thunder go back-to-back and they win a championship next year and they're the first to repeat since those Warriors, I will wear an Elvis jumpsuit and glasses on the show. So there you go. If you've listened to the show on July 10th or July 11th, 2025, you know that while you are already rooting for the Thunder because you're likely a Thunder fan, it also has a double meaning. It also has a double meaning now because of Julian. So shout out to Julian. Shout out to all of you that ask questions. I'll answer more of them, the ones we didn't get to in the coming days here on Locked On Thunder, because we are a daily Thunder podcast, the only one in existence, and we're going to do it throughout the summertime as well. So make sure you tap in, subscribe anywhere you get your podcast from, including on YouTube. And until next time, be good and be good to one.